Welcome to our lay day of mindfulness. Would like to ask you if you have one of those gadgets called mobiles, if you could please turn it off. Si vous avez un téléphone portable, si vous pouvez les... how do you say turn it off in French? Attends. The translation works? Yes. La traduction en français, ça va? So, if you have a mobile, please kindly turn it off. As human beings, we survived tens of thousands of years without a mobile. So I think it'll be safe, you'll be safe not using your mobile. Even today, I think it's safe enough. And gives us an opportunity to enter a little bit deeper into the practice. Instead of having to carry the world and the news and emails, try to look at today as an opportunity to be here, not to be elsewhere. And the second aspect I would like to invite and ask Sister permission for that to say this, is that when Thai gave a Dharma talk, normally there was no going in and out of the meditation hall. We used that as a genuine practice to really be here. So I would like to ask you, if possible, not to go in and out. Unless you really need to use the bathroom and you have no other choice, of course, please go to the bathroom. But otherwise, try to remain here. Use it as a practice. In the same way we use during the meal, the silent meal period, we don't stand up and go back and forth. This is the same. So you are invited to stay for the whole duration of the talk. Thank you.
Good morning, dear teacher Thai, dear Sangha. Brother Michael just mentioned about our practice of really be here. And I have this story to tell you. That one time when I was in our center in New York, America, it was spring. And it was so beautiful outside. So the brother and the sister said, let's have picnic lunch. So we went out to have lunch. Green grass, a table, two benches. And then there's few brother and sister, we sat together. And there was mango on the table. There was a soy sauce bottle in the middle of the table. Some cookies that the sister brought along. And it was in the middle of the table, and we all sat around the table eating together. And I remember that in my mind at that time, I was thinking about something else. I was thinking about a situation that one of our brother, he's not so happy for a few days. He didn't look at us. He didn't talk to us. And today, usually we had lunch together, and then I didn't see him that day, eating together with the sister and the brothers. And then I was caught in the thinking, what's going on? He's not happy. He's not talking. What did I do? What did we do that make him so sad? And then a brother sat next to me, and he said, "Sister, let's eat." And then I said, "Yeah, I'm eating. I was chewing." And then he said that now. I said, "What's now? He's still not talking with us." And he said, now, the soy sauce bottle in front of us. And then it just a blast, a wake up in me that I really felt something in me. Really like wake up, it's a soy sauce bottle in front of me. Totally didn't see it because I was so caught in my mind. And that's one of the moments that I call enlightenment. Last Thursday, Sister Than talked about moment of enlightenment in our daily life. We have a lot of enlightenment. Just only that small experience that I experienced that day. But I carry that with me. I still remember that brother. Sometimes enlightenment come from outside. We thought that we have to really practice hard, sit for a long time, a lot of breathing in and breathing out to get enlightenment. But no, sometimes it's just some things that come from our friend, come from a person sit next to us. Just say hello, wake up. There's a soy sauce bottle in front of you. And so come into Plum Village and practice, see, and enjoy those moments. It's really nourishing. It's really make us to wake up and enjoy life. And on my right is Brother Michael, one of my beloved brothers. And I remember that when I was a novice, I already listened to his Dharma talk. And at that time, since I was still novice, I had many difficulties practicing. And at that time, I couldn't practice deep listening. There was this particular sister that whenever I heard her name, I feel nervous. And then when I saw her approaching me, talking about something, I feel hard to breathe. And then sometimes, if it was a hot day, and then talking with her, I feel something like anger arose in me. Because she just has too much detail. She just say, help me to move that table close to the window. Yes, I can do that right away with her. But before doing it, I had maybe sometime like 5 minutes talk from her. The reason why we moved the table, that sister approaching that, she might say that, and it's a lot of details. It's like so academic all the time. She just have so extra details that made me feel really suffocated. But I was a novice, I couldn't say anything. So I just stood there and then I listened to her, and after that I feel so exhausted and I didn't know what to do. I tried to breathe I really did. But sometimes it's really tense right here. I don't feel my out breath anymore. I didn't. And then came Brother Michael's Dharma talk. He talked about deep listening. And it was so funny. And I took it so wholeheartedly, and I still remember now. So now when I listen to someone that I feel there's some kind of tensions going on, I remember Brother Michael. It was a decade ago, so I don't remember the story well, but something like this, when he listening to someone talking angrily, he put his attention into that person's nose. And of course, we want to listen more to him today. Thank you.
What, already?
And brother, you have until 11 o'clock.
I think she tricked me. Yeah? She said, "Oh, you just have to give a bit of a talk." First of all, I like to say that I really appreciate the sister. I've known her for quite a few years, so I just like to express my gratitude towards her. I'll get a couple of Dharma tools out. Dharma tools are instruments for the practice. This in case you don't know what a Dharma tool is. Maybe we listen to a sound of the bell before we continue, and maybe we can close our eyes and bring all our attention, or a certain amount of our attention, to the belly, so we can enjoy a deeper in-breath into the belly, allowing the belly to expand with the in-breath. So we feel grounded. And just letting go with the out-breath, just naturally. A little bit like a balloon inflates, and it's a feeling to the balloon, it's expanding, it feels good. And the release also feels good. So I feel a little bit like a cook who has many different ingredients to make a dish, but doesn't know yet what kind of dish he's going to make. So there's some mushrooms, there's some peppers, there's some onions, etc., tofu and tempeh, but I'm not sure exactly what kind of dish. So we'll see. Sometimes, obviously, we talk about mindfulness practice. And nowadays, there's a lot of talk about mindfulness. Everybody, I guess, has heard about mindfulness for this, mindfulness for that, mindfulness for business, mindfulness for education. So there's a lot of mindfulness floating around. It's not always 100% clear what we mean by mindfulness, as different people have different experiences. But one could say, obviously, that mindfulness is made of certain elements, and one of it is stopping. And that's why we have the bell, in order to stop. Now I know that many times I hear the bell and I'm very aware that I'm not really stopping. I may stop physically, but inside of me there's still, the hamster is still quite busy. And that's fine. That's one experience of stopping, is just to notice that the internal hamster is still quite busy. And that's fine. In fact, that's actually observing the mind. Busy mind is stopping. But what about really stopping? What about really letting go? What about really settling without any thoughts or any impulses or activity, just really breathing, really stopping? The first Dhamma talk that when I came some years ago, the first Dhamma talk that I heard Thai mention was about stopping. And it was a little bit like a sledgehammer. Because I realized I was running and running and running and running and running, and I just couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop. I tried, but my internal world was in such chaos and such intensity that it just was very difficult to actually stop and rest. It was a deep suffering, and I think many of us have that deep suffering. Because when I could not stop, I could not be nourished. So I was like a hungry ghost. In Plum Village we talk about hungry ghosts. Those people, and I was a hungry ghost, I mean, maybe still part-time hungry ghost, which have a very thin neck, a little bit like this sun clock. So only a little bit of nutriment can come in. But you have a big belly, so you have a lot of hunger. But only a little bit can come in, so you never really feel satisfied because your throat is so tiny and your belly is so huge and you have so much need. And it's good to recognize that we all have a need. It's so important to recognize having needs is not a weakness. I used to think that having a need for love, need for care, need for friendship was a weakness. Especially as a monk, when I was a monk, I thought a monk shouldn't have to need love. But that judgment came from much before. Maybe as a man should be strong. Perhaps, I don't know if that comes from there. So anyway, the Thai talked about stopping. And it really struck me because I realized I hadn't stopped. I didn't know how to stop. I worked in restaurants for many years. My last job working in a restaurant was managing a Chinese restaurant, believe it or not. It was not run by Chinese, although the cooks were Chinese, but it was run by a family, English family that employed my parents. So I thought it would be a good idea to become, for my career, to become a manager of this Chinese restaurant. It was a bit of a nightmare. I only lasted 6 months. And after 2 weeks I had to separate the cooks because they each had a knife. It's exactly like the films. Exactly. And when I had to separate these two, a Thai cook and a Chinese cook, from killing each other, or at least trying to, I thought, this is not normal. This is a crazy job. I should give it up. And eventually, after a lot of pain, I gave it up. But in my dreams, I still was running the restaurant. And when I was a novice, I remember having a dream that this restaurant had 165 seats and that it was full and that I was running and running and running and being very stressed. And I could not stop in the dream. So at some point I was Thai's attendant and I said, Thai, I explained this dream, my dream. And Thai said, did you manage to stop? I said, no, I didn't. But stopping is possible. And I'll share one of the practices that I do. and is going to the toilet. Basically, as we say in English, doing number 2. In English, we're very polite. English are very polite. So we don't say defecating or etc. We just say going to number 2, which is a very polite word for saying I'm going to sit and let go. So as you're aware, letting go is far of stopping. It's not a joke. It's true. You have to let go. So at that point I wasn't living in Plum Village. I was living in England. And although I dedicate my time, my work, quote unquote, is to offer retreats for the Sanghas in England and in Spain. So I felt that because I do that, and I spend quite a lot of time doing that I don't need to practice so much at home, because I already practice in the retreats. But as I was preparing these retreats, I realized that my hamster was quite busy. And then I realized that when my hamster is busy, it communicates to other friends inside. And then my hamster telephones with my despair. He has an email communication with my despair, and my despair begins to kind of respond and come up. So after a few weeks of being at home, I realized despair is coming up again. Frustration is coming up again. Anger is coming up again. Feeling lost is coming up again. I thought I had dealt with them because I've been practicing for such a long time. So I realized that I wasn't practicing stopping, and that I needed to insert stopping in my daily life. If I'm going to survive my daily life, even that is quite light. I don't have a job that is stressful. I don't have to commute. We live near London. I don't have to go the underground every day. I don't have to travel for hours back and forth. I don't have to live in a stressful environment. Still, I realized that if I left my mind alone, it would create suffering, and that I needed to establish a practice. So what I did is I used this for the shower. It's a 3 minute. 3 minutes. It's only €2, by the way, very cheap. So when I have a shower, because I'm part of my practice in the world is to be as environmentally aware as possible, as much as I can. So I practice a 3 minute shower. And when I use this and I go into the shower, I go into the shower with the intention to stop, to just have a shower, not to think about things, not to get caught up in things. And of course, as I enter to the shower, I start thinking. And sometimes I'm able to be aware, I'm thinking, and I come back to myself just with the experience of showering, the water, the soap, the temperature, and that's good. Sometimes I can't stop thinking, but I'm aware that there's thinking. So thinking is happening, and I'm aware that it's thinking. That is stopping. I'm aware. I'm not lost in thinking. Sometimes I've experienced going into the shower, feeling okay, stepping into the shower and beginning to think, especially about the North Korean crisis. And by the end of the shower, I started the Third World War. Because I start thinking, yes, this guy in the North Korea shouldn't be playing with nukes. We should invade, I start thinking and I get involved and I start the Third World War in the shower. And when I come out of the shower, it's like, oh my goodness, what did I do? I started the Third World War in my head. So I've noticed that there's 2 ways of having a shower. conscious shower or not conscious shower. And I use this little gadget just to remind me, what is my intention when I go into the shower? It's just a reminder. So then I thought, oh, let's apply this to going to the toilet. It's 3 minutes. So what I do, I go and sit in the toilet, and I turn this around, and I do my business. Normally, when I go to the toilet, straight away as I'm finished, I'm ready to clean and leave the bathroom. But I say to myself, if I do that, I'm not really stopping. So I use this friend to tell me, to remind me to stop. So normally I have 2.5 minutes extra time. And it's fascinating to see what happens with all that time. Because you can't go anywhere. My practice is not to finish, not to clean, just to stay, just to stop. Not do, not rush, just really stop. Because I know if I don't stop, I won't stop. Even meditating, maybe 20 minutes in the morning when I wake up at home, or 15 minutes, 17 minutes in the evening, or 10 minutes, I decide I'm going to do 15 minutes. But after 9 minutes, oh, I've got something to do. So I just turn it off, the timer, and then I go and do something. I'm not really stopping. Why is stopping so important? Stopping is important to give ourselves a break. Stopping is important to see what's going on, what is happening inside of me. Why am I suffering? Why am I running around? Why am I stressed? Why I have so many things to do? I can think about that. When I think about it, it just creates more thinking. I don't have a true refuge. So part of my experience to come into Plum Village was to find a refuge. In the midst of the fire of suffering. Thầy has a book, I don't think it's no longer in print, about the time of the Vietnam War. It's called Lotus in a Sea of Fire. And I think we're all a little bit like a lotus in a sea of fire. So what is going to help your lotus remain a lotus flower? Not to wither, not to burn up in the fires of society, at least for me. So stopping is an art, is a practice, is a way of life, a lifestyle. And with more experience, we can bring stopping into motion. That means I can do walking meditation up the high street. I can do walking meditation in the busiest train station in Germany or Paris or London. I can do walking meditation when I go and get the bus. I can do walking meditation when I go and do my shopping. Often when I go to the supermarket in England, I use the trolley as a support for my practice. So I practice walking meditation with the trolley. Because I know if I don't do it, my hamster's going to get very busy. And when my hamster gets very busy, I suffer. Because it touches other things, it touches my suffering, it touches my despair. When I hear the news, I don't know how to deal with the news. When I feel that our friend Donald Trump is tweeting around, I get either despair, or I get very angry, or both, despair and anger. And it goes much deeper. For me, it goes much deeper than that, because part of my being is a little bit like a child. There's a little child inside. So when he looks around at the world and see the kind of mess that we're creating, this little child feels very vulnerable. It feels very vulnerable because it says, these adults around me are messing up the place. It doesn't feel very safe. When the United States started the war on terror, and we had all these units, armed units around the world, killing terrorists, that response didn't feel safe to me. I didn't feel safe by having men trying to kill other men. It doesn't feel safe to me. It doesn't feel like a way to resolve issues in the world. So my inner child felt despair. And that despair is quite deep, because I'm not always in touch with my inner child, because there's quite a few layers protecting the child. But nevertheless, the child receives the news. My mind receives the news. And I have no idea how this child is responding to that, to the news. So that's why stopping is so important, because there's ways to listen to the news. And to some extent in the newspaper they don't tell you, before you read this article, take in a deep breath, meditate. Just notice that this article is just one point of view, it's not the whole of reality. You are free to say yes or no. And then once you finish reading the article, please come back again to yourself. That would be a very nice, mindful newspaper. Because the effect that these things have on us is real. It's not imaginary. I may think I have control. If I'm too quick, please tell me. You think I may think I have control. Unfortunately, it's not 100% true. I don't have much control. Because as long as I'm letting in sense impressions, I'm not aware of them, they go to different mental formations. And those mental formations, those seeds in consciousness are being watered. And because I'm not a Buddha yet, I have no idea what seeds are being watered in me. So maybe we listen to the sound of the bell. So when you go home, you can try. Like I say, it's not expensive. It's maybe €2 or maybe less. 3 minutes. So you can practice toilet meditation. Thai talked a lot about toilets. And he said some Zen masters got enlightened by going to the toilet. So you may be the lucky one. You may get enlightened while you're going to the toilet and letting go. But the idea basically is to stop. You have 3 minutes. And when I think of 3 minutes, it doesn't sound very much. In fact, 3 minutes is nothing. But when you sit in the toilet, you see how long 3 minutes are. It can be a lifetime. And then you have time to reflect, you have time to see, you have time to notice, you have time to be aware, the thinking process, what themes come up for you, why do you worry about this or that? And you're alone. There's nobody else, just you. You have time to gather your thoughts. You have time to connect with yourself, to re-establish that relationship with yourself instead of running away from ourselves. We run away. We have time to kind of come back and get like a photograph of like internal universe. And sometimes it's not always a pleasant universe. Sometimes it can be unpleasant. But by stopping, it will change. The hamster will begin to sense it doesn't need to run in the cage. It actually can go outside the cage. And outside he can go for water, or he can go for food, or if he's a good hamster, he can even meditate. He can sit on a cushion and enjoy just being present. But often the problem with running and non-stopping is we don't know we have that opportunity to step out. And to obviously Plum Village here, you have an opportunity to stop. That's what we train. I train to be compassionate to my hamster, although sometimes I feel quite annoyed with it. Why are you so busy all the time? You make me suffer. But sometimes the hamster, we sit down together and we have tea. Sometimes. And then we just sit. And when we see other people do the same, then we recognize this is possible. It is possible to stop. It is possible to come back to myself and heal myself. It is possible. It's not an illusion. And even if there's great suffering, it's possible to be with that suffering. There was someone that lost two children in a very tragic way. And this person came to Plum Village because she knew that Thai could be present for her suffering. And she said that Thai was the only person that was able to be with that suffering. All the rest of us were a bit too scared. Well, I'm afraid of suffering. But she said only Thai was the only person that was able to receive that intense suffering of her mother that had lost 2 children. It's very intense. So in a way, our practice of stopping is connected to the capacity to be with our suffering. That's one of the aims. So the more capacity I have to be with my suffering, the better I can help transform my suffering. So I'm going to finish and leave some space for the sister to maybe share. Then I bought another one, and this is 15 minutes, and I don't go to the toilet for 15 minutes. That would be a little bit too long. But sometimes I use it. First I bought it because it's beautiful. And one thing that I really appreciate from Thai is he says that the practice has to be beautiful. Why not? The practice, one element of the practice is to make things beautiful. Make your practice beautiful. So for me, this sun clock is very beautiful. So I use it sometimes because it nourishes that seed of beauty. And sometimes I use it as a reminder. If I'm working on the computer, or I'm doing something, maybe I'm cooking at home, I use it as a reminder. So all my mind is not lost in the cooking. Part of my attention is aware that this is telling me to be here, not to get lost. So I bought this one because it's more beautiful, and it inspires it brings up a natural willingness to practice. Sometimes I struggle with the motivation to practice. So by making the practice beautiful, it makes it more easy for you to connect. Yes, this is my intention to practice. And I want to sustain that intention.
Thank you, Brother Michael, for your beautiful share. That we learn a lot about stopping. And stopping is a very beautiful practice for me. Earlier I shared with you the story about my practice of deeply listening to my sister. And stopping helped me a lot at that time, because when I was angry, it's always a tendency inside of me pushing me to say something to her. I would say something to sister, blah blah blah. It's just too much. Why I have to get many Dharma talk from you for everything that you ask me to do? Something like that. But stopping, I did practice stopping. I didn't say a word. Actually, the practice, our teacher encourages us that when we angry, when we upset at someone, we don't say anything. If we see that we don't have enough calmness and peace inside of us, don't say anything. Because the more we say, the more we do, under the control of anger, it doesn't bring any benefit at all. In contrary, it would cause many problems or difficulty. So when we're angry, when we're upset, don't say anything, don't do anything, but come back and take care of ourselves. So when I endured my sister's speech at that time, I breathed, and I didn't say anything to her. And then I give myself a break, stopping so that we can take a break. And later on, I learned that my sister, there's some difficulty in her. I internalized that she didn't like me. That's why she gave me many Dharma talk. While at that time I would like to run around with my sister, playing, go up to the mountain to drink tea, to share snack with each other, to enjoy the sunset. But she called me back and sit, and I have a talk with you. So I assumed that she didn't like me, but later on, to contemplating, to listening to her, I know that it's her personality. She was raised in a family that's very quiet. Everything she did, she had to ask permission from her parents. She never had snack in her life. That's what she shared with me, and I was about to cry. Never, just only breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All the time, quiet, steady, and observed her fire manner in the family. That's all about her life. It just was that day picnic dinner. So we didn't eat in the dining hall. So I was sitting at the table in the common room of our quarter. And I was alone at that time eating my dinner, and she came and she joined me. And I just ate in silence, and she started to talk. And she shared with me about her childhood, about her life before ordained. And that's how I learned. And I was so naughty, running around, playing with the sister. And sometimes maybe I didn't observe my fire manner, talking too loud. And it bothered her. And that's why every time she called me, she wanted me to practice calm down, really, stand there or sit still to listen to her, or to come back to myself. And not just only that, I found out that everything she shared with me is very valuable. Later on, I learned that if I put myself in her shoes, I would do the same, maybe less. But she wants to explain thoroughly, so that I understand the meaning or the importance why we are doing something or why we saying something to somebody. She helped me to widen my mind, to see many other angles of what would we affect people when we say something or do something, by just only simple little things that we do in our daily life. And I really appreciated after that when she told me to take that kind of vitamins. She would explain more why I should and what other kind of vitamin I'm taking, and is it good that we're taking those vitamins together, things like that. It helped me to learn a lot. So by stopping, not reacting, because if I react strongly to her, or I say something that out of my anger, it would break the communication, the relationship, and I would shut down the door. I would not approach her, play with her, talk to her. Then how could I understand why she was teaching me like that, or why she's give me many Dharma talk like that? And because thanks to the stopping, I didn't do that. And then later on, I give myself a break and calm myself so that I could sit there at dinner table to listen to her. Listening depends on the ear and the sound. The Buddha say, ear consciousness arises. And ear consciousness as condition, feeling arises. When we hear something, we acknowledge something, trigger ourselves, and then there's some kind of feelings arises. And then feeling as condition, craving arises. Craving, we crave to do something, to react or to push away. When feelings arise because we listen to something, unpleasant feeling coming up, pleasant feeling coming up, or neutral feeling, not pleasant, not so unpleasant coming up. When we hear something, then with the ear consciousness, we have a feelings that I agree with that, I disagree with that, or neither. And we are acting, speaking and thinking according to that feelings, to that craving, to do something and not to do something. But the practice of stopping helps us to be free from these feelings. Not that we want to cover ourselves and then don't listen to it. We listen, but we breathe. We put mindfulness in front of us. And then also our teacher said that we hold on, we hold compassion tight inside of us, so that we are not controlled, we are not overwhelmed by these feelings. Compassion. Brother Michael shared earlier about being compassionate. We see that why we agree and why we not agree with that. When we agree with something, we go for that. And then when we disagree with something or someone, we want to eliminate, we want to push away. And with that kind of attitude, we don't learn more. We don't learn what really is. Why we agree with that person saying something about something. We just follow our like and dislike. Liking and disliking. But when we stop and we have compassion, then what we don't like, we calm enough, then we see what's behind that. Why the person say what he was saying. There's many conditions coming together to make him or her saying that. And there's no individual reason. There's so many reasons coming together, and they are interrelated. Because her father may have said something to her like that, and she got that word in her mind. And now when she encountered the situation, she said something the same as her father did. So listening with compassion is the practice. Always have compassion for ourselves when we listen to someone, listen to something, listen to the news, listen to the president announcing war. Listening with compassion and also listening with the insight of impermanence. Today, I heard the president announcing war, and I don't like it. For example, and I don't like it. And I don't like the president. But like the story I told you earlier about the soy sauce bottle, the power of the present moment. He announcing, for example, he was announcing word at 7 o'clock this morning, but now it's about 11. Totally different time and space right now. The legislator might have given him some other information. Or his wife might have said something with him at 8 o'clock. His children might have said something to him at 8:30. And the other country might have sent him another message. And then maybe at 10:30 this morning, he stopped the war. And now now at 11 o'clock, we are not at war. The power of the present moment. So have some object with us. Sometimes I saw my sister, she has a pebble in her pocket. And from time to time she would put her hand in the pocket to touch that pebble. It's right here, right now. We heard about the war at 7 o'clock and it's not yet executed. It's just announcing and we're already in war in ourselves. And we look at everything around us at war. Present moment, right here. And allow things to change because the Buddha said everything is impermanent. So while we listen to something, come back to ourselves, breathe. Say present moment, here and now. Listen with compassion. Allow everything. Allow everything to take its course. Changing. Constantly, every minute, every second. That's what we learn from the Buddha's teaching. Listening. So that we can be at peace. We can be free. Free from notion, free from idea, free from our mental construction, free from exaggeration that we created in our mind. Be free. We have the right to be free by coming back to the present moment. And listening is sometimes really hard because we are social beings. And then we always listening to something, and sometimes we listen to some sour speech, bitter speech, not nourishing speech. The Buddha encouraged his students to practice loving speech by not saying something untrue, by not saying something with two tongues. You come to A, you say something not good about B, and you come to B and you say something that not good about A, to cause the conflict between two. The Buddha encourages us not to speak harsh words because it's so unpleasant for people to hear. Harsh words don't go directly to the heart, or if it went directly to the heart, it hurt people. It causes pain. And the Buddha also encouraged us not to speak in the exaggeration. Don't exaggerate things. Don't make things become so big unnecessarily. So in the old day, those are the encouragements of the Buddha about speech. When we speak, we should be mindful of these four practices, so that we don't cause ourselves unhappy and other people unhappy. So the communication can flow and can establish and can be happy. But nowadays in Plum village, our teacher extended the practice of loving speech. It is actually in the fourth mindful trainings of the 5 mindfulness training that you can see in the daily chanting book or the recitation book, or actually every retreat or wherever we go, we would like to introduce the 5 mindfulness training with everybody. And one of those 5 is the loving speech and deep listening practice, which is the fourth. Listening so that we can embrace ourselves And then we can give the other persons to share, to lessen her or his pain or difficulties. So that's why breathing, stop, coming back to ourselves, coming back to the energy of compassion inside of us, say that I am listening, so that the other person can share. And sometimes maybe there's anger in him, he can diffuse that anger energy in him. So I should just sit still and listen without judging, without criticism, without saying back. But just sit quietly and listen so that I can learn what's going on in the other person. Compassionate listening. And loving speech. We speak gentle words. We speak in such a way that we can bring the two persons together so that they can love each other more. We can go to A and we can share something good about B to let A have more information about B. There's something very good about B, but A was caught in his or her idea about B. That's so negative. So that's why he or she got stuck right there. But there's so much about B. There's beauties about B. There's so many good quality in him or in her, in B. So we can come to A and say something good about B. B says something very good about you to me, you know. Something like that. We can go to B and say something very good quality of A. So A and B can come together and can see, each other beyond the negativity. We can speak in such a way that we can speak out the truth. But in a very skillful way, our teacher said. Sometimes we say, I speak the truth, but if it's not in a timely, it's not appropriate, then it's a wrong speech, he said. Even though you say the truth, but it's not in a good time and space, then it's not beneficial. So we have to see when and where. And when we calm enough, when we have peace and we have very strong intention to establish communication, then come and say. We speak in such a way that we can water the seed of confidence, joy and hope in the other person. We can speak words that give people hope, give people insight, encourage people to practice. And there's many types of speech. Our teacher said that telephone meditation is one kind of speech. Sometimes we speak out of anger, and we cause more anger, and we cause more discord between us and the other person. But sometimes the practice of telephone meditation helps a lot to reconcile, because over the telephone and with the telephone meditation practice, we speak more gentle, with mindfulness. When we pick up the phone, our practice is that we breathe in and out 3 times. And we recite the gatha of telephone meditation. May my words carry love and understanding. May my words re-establish communication, give people hope, joy. May my words become beautiful as flowers. And then when we recite that gatha and when we breathe, then we pick up the phone the way we said, the way we speak with other person at the other end would be so much different. We would speak so that we can reconcile with the other person. Another type of speech our teachers share with us is writing a letter. Sometimes we have difficulty with the other person. We have anger, we have wrong perception about the other person. We don't want to speak. We don't want to talk. Because we know that there's anger there. We don't have enough peace. So we like to practice write a letter, a love letter. And because before we send the letter, usually we read again and again and again until we feel, okay, sent. Right? So we read the letter, we read our email. So writing a letter is a form of speech that can give us freedom, give us peace, give us a chance to reconcile peacefully. Because when we read each sentence, we know that this sentence will trigger anger or not trigger anger in the other person. This sentence would give the other person understand me more, understand the situation more or not. Read this sentence to see that we will get support from him or from her to clear the wrong perception, to understand and establish more love in the relationship. So writing a letter is one form. Silence is another form of speech. And we practice noble silence here in Plum Village. And I know that many of us like this practice. Because when we in silence, we're really present. When we offer our practice of silence to the other people, in such a way that the other person know that we are embracing ourselves and also support the other person to speak. We just sit, listen. We keep silent so that we can listen and the other person can talk. The practice of silence is that we silence our mind. We silence judging, criticism, discrimination up here. We silence them so that we can be present with our whole being to listen to the other person. There's suffering in him. There's some difficulty, there's some wrong perception. So I want to sit and attentively listen. And if there's tension, I will look at his nose, up and down. Come back to our breathing so that we can relax, listen. And we know that our intention is to reestablish communication, to generate love, to have more understanding, to allow impermanence, to have compassion for ourselves and the other person. When people were passing away, if we were there and we practice silence, silence or of like, dislike, agree, disagree, but just breathe, establish peace and love in ourselves and sit there, and our silence, our presence is a big gift that we can offer to the person about to pass away. Our teacher also taught us to just sit next to the person, silence, breathe, know that there's energy of peace, of love, stay present, embracing him, embracing her. So I have a little bit about loving speech and deep listening, and the joy of practicing traveling happily in the present moment. I wonder if my brothers have some left words for the audience. thoughts.
I can't remember mentioning about looking at the person's nose, but if that works for you, that's good. I guess I was more like choosing an object where it allows you to focus, so you don't get lost in your thinking when you're listening. But thank you, sister, for sharing that. The only thing I will share is that basically, if you go to the toilet, you're welcome to practice stopping, and if you don't have one of these, no problems. You can count from 1 to 60 twice, and that's already very good. Sometimes I don't bring this into the bathroom, and what I do, I count mentally 1 to 60. 1 minute. 1 to 60. 2 minutes. And then that's it. So that's one way to practice stopping, by counting. The same way we count our breaths. Sometimes one practice is to count the breaths. In, out, 1. In, out, 2. In, out, 3. The same way you can use counting in other ways, even for chewing. And when in some retreats, we ask people to chew 60 times each mouthful. And it sounds like a lot, but when you start doing it, it's much easier than you think. The soup is more difficult, yes. One brother said, one of our elder brothers used to say, chew the liquid and drink the solid. So basically say, when you even have your soup, you can chew it. So in order for your saliva to better permeate the food, and then you digest it better. And when it's solid, chew it enough so it becomes liquid, then it's easy for you to digest. So that's one possibility. So for lunch today, if you want, you're invited to chew a few more times, and maybe to simplify, just eat one piece of one thing at a time, and instead of maybe to fill the spoon, try just half a spoon, just as a practice, just notice. So simplifying in order to be much, for the senses to be, so there's a more simple relationship, and then notice the difference. Thank you.